that you incur with privatizing.
Here's the thing, and I know that our viewers are smart enough to understand this. The state costs are based on the state had to build the building, buy the property, design, build, function it, and staff it. This private for-profit corporation has no skin in the game. Not one dime have they put into it that they didn't get refunded. So right out of the gate, you have a private system with no money invested versus a state. That's an unfair analogy to start out with.
Yeah.
Even with that said, the state only comes in $9 a day more than this private facility does. And to add insult to injury, this private facility gets to pick and choose the prisoners. They're low-risk prisoners. And on top of that, they have a cap on medical expenses. So at a certain dollar value for, a heart attack or a limb replacement or whatever, at a certain dollar value, those prisoners are rotated back to the state for the state to pick up those costs.
Yeah.
And
well, and apparently the way they worked the bid was, instead of saying, tell us how cheaply you can operate this program, they said, well, here's how much we'll pay you.
Right.
What will you give us for that?
Right.
Which is, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
the devil's always in the contract details with stuff like this.
I mean, right out of the gate, when I started digging into this, and actually we had found that early on before I talked to the president of the PBA, we had found the email where Ray Sanson and another senator and Team Santa Rosa had a meeting right here in our county in '08, and then knowing that Ray Sanson had already, with the issue with the hangar in Okaloosa County, that's what caused me to start digging.
And that's a good point, because that meeting happened before Charlie Crist's office called and told Team Santa Rosa that
Right.
they would open their meetings per law to the public.
And that's a very important distinction. Those meetings were held at 8 p.m. at night. No member of the public was invited. And folks, look, on top of that, we have an email where a local developer sent an email to the folks that was at that meeting, telling and emphasizing to them this must stay confidential and don't talk to anybody about it. Interestingly enough, that occurred in February. The prison didn't become public knowledge until June of that year. And that certainly, as a person, and ladies and gentlemen, Deborah and I both feel strongly about this, and in open government, that was not an open government. That wasn't the finest day of open government. That stuff was being done cloak and dagger, late at night.
If somebody wanted to bring that to court, I think that's a legitimate lawsuit, quite frankly.
Right.
And of course, we've seen in the past when governments have done stuff behind closed doors and created policy and so on and so forth, and then they've been challenged in court and they've lost, they've had to actually go revisit what they've done, and they've had to redo a lot of stuff.
Right.
Because you can't do that stuff behind closed doors with our money.
Well, it is no way. The one thing that amazes me in all of this, folks, this is the government that you and I pay for. We should have a front row seat into everything that goes on. And I grow very tired of the arguments from elected officials. Not so much in Santa Rosa County, but in Escambia County at the Pensacola City Council and the Escambia County Commissioners. And I hear the same comments every. Well, with too much public involvement, it's just so very difficult to get things accomplished. Well, folks, this Blackwater Prison is a fine example, a perfect example of when you work in the shadows, you get involved in some things that wasn't even a good deal, wasn't asked for. Really embarrassing situation.
Well, you get into where you're in there to maximize money making.
Right.
And the other thing we need to talk about a little bit is sort of the larger issue of the fact that if you have a prison and you have empty beds, then you have an incentive for and we've seen it in other states where you've had corrupt judges who have over-sentenced people so that they'll fill the beds in the prison, and maybe they're getting a kickback, maybe they're going to somebody's
Yeah, and
out on
folks,
somebody's
look,
boat.
what Deborah's talking about actually happened in Pennsylvania. We talked a little bit about it before, where a series of judges were found guilty of taking penny ante, small little infractions that people had done.
Well, they were kids.
Yeah,
They were kids.
and most of them juveniles, and turned it into a crime high enough to justify, 6 months in this facility.
Right.
And there was kickbacks being handed out, and it occurred. That
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
It was investigated, and I certainly don't. I always want to believe the best in folks, but we continue to see things like that, where incarceration of folks is a big business.
Unfortunately, on
we
one side of the house it is.
We can justify more cars with flashing lights on top of them. We can justify more guns. We can justify more people. Oh, the criminal element. The interesting thing is when you look at major crime in the United States of America, it's been on a steady decline
Yeah.
for years. The difference is media puts a lot more of it out there.
Violent crime is on the decline, but if you look at some of these ridiculous drug sentences for somebody that's got a bag of marijuana
Yeah,
in their pocket,
nonviolent crime.
and people are going to jail for that, and
Yeah.
and then the taxpayers are paying to keep somebody who has no reason to be in jail, and it's not a threat to the community.
Well,
in jail.
I was talking with a local judge recently, and he was expressing his frustrations in that as a local judge, because they have written so much policy from the state level, that he has very little leeway
Yeah.
into anything he does. And he expressed to me that, for example, someone has lived here all their life. You know them, you know their family. One of their kids does a little something that they shouldn't have. Potentially a good stern talking to in a lot of cases will get a kid back on the right track, but he's hemmed up between sentencing guidelines and has to do things. Look, and I know myself. I got in a little trouble as a youth in Judge Coley Nichols, and I went to see him. It was kind of me and a city cop couldn't get along too well, and he gave me that stern talking to, and he said, "I'm not going to tell your parents, and I know you have a job, so it's going to cost you $25 out of your pocket, which you're going to pay today in court costs. But let me make it very clear to you that if you and that officer come before me again, I don't know you." Well, he convinced me, and suddenly I realized that I could get along with that police officer, and that's what we ought to do.
Right.
Just chunking people in jail. There's a lot of circumstances where we could take the time. We seem so rushed to judgment on folks, but we could take the time, and I hate it, especially at the county judge level, because they're dealing with the barking dog and things of that nature. They do need a little freedom.
Yeah.
There,
But if you put a profit incentive in there, then you're going to have corruption. If you open the door, it's going to walk in.
Exactly. Well, another thing, folks, and we actually talked about it in one of our previous shows, was the Bo Johnson Bridge.
Yes.
The increase, and this is from, I want to give credit to them, the Press Gazette kind of let people make a few comments, and I thought some were pretty funny. But I want to start it with something that's kind of interesting. The fee will be 50 cents higher than the current fee, and was implemented because the current price is actually hurting the bridge, according to Roy Andrews, the attorney for the Santa Rosa Bridge Authority. Now, folks, I want to tell you again, that bridge was done with bond money. The fee increases were in writing before they sold the bonds, and really the only way around this thing is for the Bridge Authority to refinance the bridge to have this.